Greetings, my name is Blaze, and today I wanted to talk about the Book of Shadows, the Grimoire, the magical journal, notes. Doesn't really matter what you call it. In fact, I personally do not like referencing it as the Book of Shadows. The main reason I put that in the title and mention that to begin with is because, let's face it, it's clickbait. I mean, seriously, most people have heard the term Book of Shadows, and it invokes this image of mystery. So, what is a Book of Shadows? So that is mostly going to depend on your tradition. Not all traditions utilize the Book of Shadows. Now, one of the reasons for the naming, in my opinion, from what I have seen and researched, is shadows are mysterious, unknown. They're darkness. There's things outside of the light of understanding and knowledge. So it's the mystery. So it's the mystery school. So it's a book of mysteries. That's essentially what you're talking about when you say a Book of Shadows. The Book of Shadows is one name in a specific tradition. You'll usually see this in Wicca. You sometimes see this in witchcraft. I have not heard others use the term Book of Shadows besides for those two paths. And yes, they are different paths. You will, however, notice that taking notes or having a journal of some form, you'll see that in many walks of life. You'll see students do that for school. You'll see it in college or in high school. You'll have notebooks, social study notebooks. You know, different type of class, they'll each have their own notebook with notes for what you're studying. If you're researching anything, you'll take down notes. You might take snippets or use a Word document, or you might write it down on a notepad or a piece of paper or a Post-it note to remember for later. The main point is, anytime that you're studying something, it's nice to have a reference and something to refer back to. And it doesn't really matter the tradition. It doesn't really matter what you call it. You heard me mention Book of Shadows, but I also said Grimoire. And the reason I said Grimoire is that's another term that a lot of folks have heard, and they're like, well, what's the difference between Book of Shadow and Grimoire? It just kind of comes down to the context of the individual using it, honestly. The Book of Shadows is typically a journal that is taken as a record of the studying that you've done, specifically within the path of witchcraft or even in Wicca. A grimoire sometimes is also associated with other paths. You might also see this in shamanism, you might see this in sorcery. And typically the difference between a Book of Shadow and a grimoire is a grimoire, from what I understand, is something that's passed down, and it's more a book written by others that are part of your group, that are part of your circle, that are part of your coven, versus a Book of Shadows, which is a personal book, which is your personal path, versus a shared collective. So a grimoire might go within the family, but a Book of Shadows, depending on the tradition, you actually burn it when you pass, or have your family burn it for you, or if you no longer follow the path, burning it into ashes to release the energies, and again, to keep your secret. When you're talking about different types of paths, especially when it comes to witchcraft or Wicca, those paths are very big on keeping secret. There is a book over here, and I want to say it's right there, A Grimoire of Shadows by Ed Fitch. It's actually a pretty good book on witchcraft, kind of like it. It's up there on the left-hand side. He has the four words, which I think are kind of cool: to know, to dare, to will, to keep silent. Hey, look at that. I made a jump into my hands. Did not stop the video and start it again, I swear. So, A Grimoire of Shadows, it has this really cool section in here. And by the way, this is referred to as witchcraft. This is one tradition. You might consider this to be a grimoire if you wanted to, but usually a grimoire is like a handwritten thing, and again, usually passed down. And don't quote me on that as the only source of the way to use the term grimoire, but it has this really cool thing here: to know, to dare, to will, to keep silent are the four words of the magus. In order to dare, we must know. In order to will, we must dare. We must will to possess empire. To reign, we must keep silent. And the reason I specifically bring that up, if it'll focus here, is for the fact that keeping silent is kind of a big deal when it comes to occult, spirituality type of practices, arcane, because it is believed that if you are putting out energy, that it can be disrupted by other vibrations and energy and others knowing about it. For example, if you were to cast a spell, others could interfere with that spell knowing it was cast versus them not knowing, as an example. It just comes down to personal practice and preferences, and it can vary. But again, that's kind of an example of what I mean as far as what goes into your Book of Shadows. It's a personal thing and you don't share that. A lot of individuals won't even show what the book looks like or show inside of it. I actually am going to give some examples of some different books and talk about not only how it's kind of cool to actually write things out by hand, something that's dying in this day and age, and don't worry, I'm actually going digital as well, but it's actually kind of cool to maybe give it a little extra flair by writing it in a personalized script that nobody else can read. So if they did find your Book of Shadows, or your journal, or your notebook, or your grimoire, whatever you want to refer to it as, they wouldn't be able to read it anyway. Because again, these are your personal thoughts and your power words. I mean, what sort of things can you put inside of a Book of Shadows, or a journal, or a notebook, or a grimoire? Quite literally anything that you're studying that you want to remember later. You can put in power words, you can put in your different thoughts and how you're feeling, and actually journal inside of it. You can put down different things that mean or are significant to you. For example, in Druidry, specifically the Druid path I'm referring to, you'll see the Manila folders right up here behind me. This is OBOD, or Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. That's their bardic course. And they talk about taking down notes as you're going through each of the Guerci or the Guers, which is like the lessons. And as you're going through them, you kind of take notes of what you're doing and what you're working on and how you're feeling, so you can go back to them and reference them and see how you've changed or what your opinion used to be. It's kind of, it's a neat point. So again, you can put down actually journaling inside of these. You can put down different types of prayers, or you can put down different types of recipes. You can put down different references for maybe scripts or things to study later, or you can put down descriptions on ritual tools. Like, there is an endless number of things you can put inside of these. Again, this is your study notes. For example, if you were going into college and you're sitting down in your psychology class, and maybe you're putting down specific doctors who had theories on how the mind and the psyche work, or different experiments you wanted to research and look up later. Or maybe there's some favorite quotes that you like that you might want to use if you got into counseling, for an example. It is good to write down stuff and remember them later for your test and your quiz. So in your magical journey, this is the types of stuff that you would write down and want to reference later. So this is my first one. And look at that. It's the Spiral Bound Notebook. This thing is very old. I wonder if I have any dates in this. Yeah. So looks like I started this out 1/13/2000. So this is about 20 years old. That's not too bad, and it's not going to focus. Whoa. Of course it's not going to focus. Doesn't matter. But anyway, like, this is like when I was studying Reiki, and I actually have the hand positions in there, and I kind of wrote out some of that because I wanted to remember it later. I've got some scripts in here and the different letter representations for them, which, again, is kind of neat things that I wanted to reference later. And I put down dates. Here's the Norse runes. Here's some things about oils and incense. Yeah, just different stuff that I thought was worth referencing. So this whole thing is filled up to the brim, and I actually ran out of space. So when I ran out of space, I'm like, okay, well, I need something else to write in. So I decided to step it up, and I went to Half Price Books, and I got a journal book. And this is a leather bound with a tag in here. And I actually rewrote, because it was blank pages, I rewrote a lot of stuff that I wanted to reference later. So, which one? Some scripts in here, and very similar to the other one, but this thing is almost filled up. Let's see, how far did I get? So I started doing the OBOD stuff, and I wanted to start writing down some of the, like, this is the Druid Animal Oracle. Like, it's actually a book, and I wrote down some of the parts of it that stood out to me the most. So, I mean, I still have some room left in here, but I was thinking, I was like, you know, that's getting pretty full as well. So then I moved on to this for, this one's really cool. This one I got at the Renaissance Festival. So it's got a leather binding and a leather strap, and it's got this button, which is a hand-carved button. And the paper in here is all recycled paper. And then I have this one, which I started dedicating to Druidry itself, because it was leaves and it used to have a stick in here. These are actual leaves for the cover. Yeah, I just kind of took down some notes on things that I wanted to reference again, and it goes, you know, multiple pages in this. That takes forever to write out a lot of this stuff, but I don't know. I think that it's interesting to have these books, but I even decided to go a little bit modern with it and go with the digital. So now I've got a OneNote where I take a lot of my notes. So again, it's like it comes down to where you want to put this stuff and this information. You can put it in a digital format. You can handwrite it out. The point is writing down stuff that you eventually want to look up and read about later and be reminded of. I mean, if you're looking through a whole bunch of books on a whole bunch of different topics, if you're blending stuff together, or if you're learning from a teacher, the books, let's face it, they jump all over the place. I mean, you can do studies on your own. You can do research on your own. Yeah. I didn't just stop the video again, honestly. But if you are looking through book after book, and these are all on the Norse traditions, I'll sit through and talking about the sagas and the Eddas. And you read through all of these. Well, guess what? If you want to reference something in one of these books and look it up later, well, yeah, you could flip through the pages, you could highlight the pages, you can use them as reference books, and that's fine and dandy. But what if, A, you wanted to share some of your favorite pieces, your favorite exercises, your favorite meditations, your favorite power words or prayers, your favorite stories? That's why you should try to journal some of it out too. Maybe, you know, have something to quickly reference. I mean, it's fun and dandy if you want to memorize it, but let's face it, there's a lot of stuff to memorize. If you start doing a whole bunch of different reading on a whole bunch of different books or different paths or full courses, it's going to get to be a lot, and it's going to be hard to remember it all. So again, you know, document it in your journal. Document it in your magical text. And that's all these are. They're notebooks. That's what they're for. They're for taking some quick notes and referencing them later. So hopefully that answers a few questions when it comes to Book of Shadows, magical journal, a grimoire, or just your basic notebook, and why you might want to consider utilizing one and different types of things that you can also think about putting into them. So thanks for watching. Remember to thumb up, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.